But while she has many skills, one of those is actually facilitating meetings like this. So she has graciously agreed to facilitate this meeting. Several weeks ago, sent an email out to both council and the planning board asking if you would, if you had topics that were relevant to the UDO, if you would provide those to us. Broad topics, broad areas that perhaps needed to be reviewed, looked at, discussed. Perhaps edits may be necessary or changes may be necessary, but it would give us a guide that staff could then take, work with the planning board, and make those revisions and edits, and then bring those to City Council for adoption. So it's always a good thing if we're all working together, pulling in the same direction and understand the direction we're headed in. And this meeting tonight, one of the purposes of this meeting tonight is so that we can all get on the same page with some of these issues. Just in the very short time that I've been here, I've heard a number of concerns or perhaps a desire, a very strong desire to engage in discussions about some of the items in the UDO that now that it had been adopted and people have worked with it for a while, that folks are realizing that there are some edits that potentially need to be made. We need to identify those, and then we need to work together to make that happen so that it benefits our entire community. So, having said that, to start with, what I thought would be a very prudent thing to do and would kind of level set for everyone as a reminder and as a base for the discussion that we will have in just a few minutes. If Doug could give us an overview of exactly, what has transpired with the UDO from a timeline perspective. There was a lot of work done to revise the old UDO, and then there have been some amendments and edits along the way. So just as a reminder to everyone what those were, I'd like to ask Doug if he would please walk through the timeline with us. And when he is done with that, we'll turn it over to Michelle, who will bring up the list of items and topics that you have provided to us, and then we'll start working through that list. What we want to do is gain some consensus about what the priorities are. It would be wonderful if we could walk away from this meeting and with a short list of things that are priorities that we can all focus on together and move forward together in working on. So Doug, I'm going to turn that over.
I'm gonna try to talk without the mic.
You're going to try to talk.
Yeah.
Okay, that'll be fine. All right.
If y'all can't hear me, just let me know and I'll take the handheld. Can y'all hear me, Councilmember Thompson and Councilmember Kazaki? Can you hear me? Okay. Can you hear me? Okay. Well, you didn't respond. That's why I didn't know. Okay. All right. You answer my question. I'll take the mic in my hand. Okay. Just kind of give an overview to kind of how we got to where we are today. When the city started doing this, we started working on adoption of the new code back in 2015. And the previous code that the city had adopted was adopted in December 2003. So it had been roughly 12 years since we adopted our last code. And we started out with a planning consultant called Code Right. They were a consultant, and we worked with them a couple years. Things were not proceeding in the manner we wanted them to proceed time-wise, And so we then changed over in July of 19 to Kimley Horn. And once we changed over to Kimley Horn is a national plan organization. They have multiple offices across the United States, so they are able to put the resources and the staff together to assist us with preparing this document. And so once they came on board, we had a series of workshops. We had workshops with Plan Board and Council. We had a total of 5 workshops. The first one was in June of 2019, and then it looks like we had the last one in August of 2021. And the purpose of those workshops, when we did those workshops, Kimley Horn, they would show language or different scenarios. We showed the map of different ordinance sections that was proposed within that was going to be within the ordinance. All of it wasn't necessarily fine-tuned at that time, but it was talked about, different development incentives, the different types of, we talked about PUDs and different types of rezoning. So we went through that. And then, and I'll touch on, and in the last workshop we did was in August of 21, but then in June of 21, we took the show on the road. We had 4 open houses or community workshops, and we had 4 open houses in the same week. We had them at different times. We had one here, and we had one at the Monroe Country Club, and then we had one at Trinity Baptist Church up on 601 North. And then our last one was at South Piedmont Community College. So we tried to pick, different areas of the city so we could, reach out to those people in those areas. And what we did prior to those workshops is we mailed postcards to every person, every parcel that was within the city, as well as every parcel within ETJ, notifying the people of the workshops that had the location, time of each one, to try to solicit as much feedback and community input as we possibly could get at these workshops. So we had the workshops, and then after that, the ordinance was adopted by Plan Board, and then after that, we had had public hearings and went to council 3 times. It first went to council in September of 21. It was tabled, and then it went again in October, and it was tabled again to the final adoption that happened in April 12th of 2022, which we roughly had it adopted for basically 13 months now. And we've done some residential projects, we've done, some commercial projects, commercial additions, and, there's not a day that goes by that we don't use the ordinance. Whether it's somebody building a shed on their property, or whether they're building a new house, or whether they're doing signage, we use it every single day, both myself, Carrie, Megan, another planner, and as Lisa. So we use it every day regarding signs, all aspects of development. It doesn't necessarily have to be residential. That's what people think of. And I know that's what, we get a lot of concerns from citizens about, but we use it for many other tools as well. The total price of the ordinance, which included a legal review we had from an independent legal counsel, was roughly $257,000. And that was total money spent for including advertising. And I'll say, when we did the public hearings, we did the 3 public hearings I mentioned, and which we took the ordinance 3 times. And we did the public hearings. The statute allows 2 different ways to notify. Typically, usually we notify, and we say this at our meetings at council, that we notified everybody within 150 feet of the property, as well as posted the property. And of course, we run a legal ad in the paper. But what we did for the UDO is we notified 3 different times. We notified every person, every parcel owner within the city of Monroe, every parcel owner within the ETJ, and every parcel owner that was in 150 feet of the city limits, as well as we did our typical legal advertisement, as well as we ran a half-page newspaper ad, and we posted it on Facebook and the city's website. And the purpose of that was to those, and I'll say typically with the plan staff we have now, we usually go above and beyond for notification requirements. Because our thought says, I'd rather go above and beyond to notify and send a letter versus not send a letter and have something challenged over us not sending a $1 letter for a meter. So usually, if it's in close proximity of being notified or not, usually we're going to err on the side of notifying just to make sure we go above and beyond. So again, I said the ordinance was adopted in April, and then since that time, we've processed text amendments. And just like when we told y'all when we did this ordinance, there's going to be amendments that's going to come down the pipeline because, I remember the first day, April 13th, we had a guy that was wanting to come to do a office development off of Franklin Street down toward the hospital. And he came in like, golly. I told him what the ordinance was, and basically the ordinance requirements when he applied the buffers, it made his property where it was extremely difficult to develop. And that was I discovered that on April 13th, the day after it had been adopted. So at this time, I'm going to go through just a few of the amendments. The first set of amendments we adopted were that went to council, and obviously it goes to council and went to planning board first. They were adopted on November 8th of 2022. And on that particular night, there were 16 sections that were modified to the code, and one of which was either council or planning board initiated, and that section was dealing with the landscape, bufferings, and fences and walls. So that was a section either planning board or council had input and asking us to look into, so we did. And then on January 10th of 2023, we processed 4 text amendments that particular evening, and all of those were either planning board or city council initiated, and those involved the plan development section, which talks about the language of the minor and major modifications that allow staff to do, as well as the plan unit developments, as well as the cluster and conservation subdivisions, basically removing them to be allowed by right and making those be approved by city council. So, and those are required to be city council approval. And then finally, just this week, May 9th, we had 10 sections that we modified, and 2 were initiated by planning board and or city council, and those involved the section 7.1 table of permissible uses, which basically took the apartments out of the GB district as allowed by right, and as well as to modify, we went from basically figuring density from gross acreage to net acreage. And so those 10 that we did this week, and then currently we have drafted right now, and they're pending legal review. And they're ready to go from our standpoint. We have 5 sections. Of those 5 sections, 3 were initiated by planning board or council, and 2 of them involving dealing with vested rights and permit choice. And then the other one that's council or planning board driven is the involving traditional districts. And basically what that boils down to is requiring any project that's going to be more than 50 lots be required to be processed as a rezoning. And so ultimately we'll have planning board input and city council approval. And so that's 5 more that we have. And we've also sent the landscape section to the Union County arborist to review that. And when he reviewed it, because I'll be honest, there's parts of the landscape and specifically parts of the tree preservation that are difficult to navigate through. And so we've had him look at that and help us to try to, and he's marked it up, but he's marked it up so much it's just taken us a while to go through. And our hopes is to have that before planning board and ultimately by city council by the end of summer. And so that concludes as far as the way we've got from where we started to where we are now with all the text amendments we're doing. And so that's all I have. And
Thank you, Doug. Does anyone have any questions about the history or the sequence of what's happened up to this point? If not, I'm going to turn it over to Michelle to begin our discussion.
Thank you very much. I think I introduced myself to everybody if I didn't know you already. The one thing that I think Mark left out when he was talking about me is that I am recently retired from local government. So I was in local government for a really long time, retired on April 1st, so I didn't stay away very long, and I'm already back doing some things and happy to continue to be helpful in the community. Before I go through a few things here, one of the things that after talking to Mark and a couple of times about what he was looking for, what you all were looking for in this joint meeting, one of the things that I really wanted to stress, and I hope this goes without saying, but as somebody who is a lifelong adult professional career in local government, that your staff here they're all committed to giving you what you need, the best information that they can, so that you can make the best decisions that you can. That's what we do. That's what we're all trained professionally to do. I don't know that I've ever met anybody in local government who doesn't come at this profession that way, because we're not doing it for the glitz and the glory, as you know. That really is the basic premise of what your planning staff, what your management staff are really committed to. So I hope this really helps you all get kind of that step in that direction, as Mark said, about working together. You're two unique groups that have similar interests, but different roles. You've got a planning board who serves in an advisory role, taking information in, giving advice and guidance to a city council who has the ultimate responsibility for making decisions. So you've got similar interests, but you play different roles. And so I hope that after you see the information that you've given today, we'll go through that. You'll have an opportunity to add items if there are things that you've thought of since you submitted the things to Mark, or if there are things that come to mind when you see the topics. And then really what I was asked to do is to also help you prioritize what those are as a group. And I think because you're all good, smart people, you're going to do that really simply, and we're going to know what staff needs to walk away from here to help you continue the work that you want to do. So I did bring some ground rules though, because I was asked to facilitate and moderate a group of people. So I think these are important. I don't think this is going to be an issue, but I want everybody to be on the same page. If I do try to keep things going, if for some reason we need to do that. This really isn't about debate today. You're not trying to resolve these issues. You'd be here all night until tomorrow and through the weekend. So that's not what the purpose of today is. It really is to gather information, everybody hear it at the same time, and understand it as best as you can the same. So I do want to stress, so if you see things or you hear things and you just don't understand what the concept is or the question, ask clarifying questions. I think that would be helpful to everybody. Speak one at a time. Everybody should participate and be respectful, and again, ask for clarification if you need it. So the feedback, I took all the feedback Mark sent me and I tried to synthesize it down into some bullet points to give you some topics to look at. So we'll go through this page and get some feedback on this. And then Carrie has graciously agreed to scribe if there are things that we want to add that we can take back. So these are in no order. I took these they're out of order for how they came to me. So the first one was around minimum tree size standards and a requirement for landscape plan submittal with each project. And that actually goes in line with one of the topics that Doug raised. Amenities distance to residences. And then third, non-conforming site plans and rezonings that are 2 years old or more. This one had a lot of words in it, so my take of what was being asked for was a legal review of what options you may have for projects that are kind of been out there lingering for some period of time, and you haven't seen any action on. And then the issue of vested rights and by right issues. Then the issue of density was mentioned a few times from folks. And a couple of times the issue of the inclusion of stream buffers and wetlands and stormwater into that calculation of density seemed to be a topic. And then open space, and if stormwater should be included in that, and any minimum requirements for residential zoning. So does that hit everybody like some topics that you're interested in? Okay. Next, you had some feedback on wanting some policies and guidance and term definition for all boards who utilize the UDO. That was one of the requests. There was interest in looking at incentives for increasing density allowances. Again, there was some mention about by right provisions in the UDO, so that seems to be a kind of a common theme, I would say. Permitting timelines, limitations, enforcement, and site inspections. This one, from my perspective, was probably a little off from the UDO, but it was something that was a fairly well thought out question. And then the staff reporting before the planning board, there was some desire to see some improvements or changes and additional data that you might want to see coming to you before you make recommendations to the council. So that captures what I had that was submitted. So this is the opportunity to ask for clarification or add things. Does anybody have anything they want to add? That's what we'll start with.
Was there, did you see, and it may be included in something here that I'm not, just not picking up on the, where it would fall, on a section regarding materials, if one building was a certain type of material and there was an exclusion, if another building could be built. Do you remember seeing that?
No, there were 3 very specific questions that were, literal questions that I just shared with Doug right before this that he's gonna work on getting answers to, but I didn't see that. But would you like that added?
I would, if there's a, I believe a section, do you need the number or you just need, I don't know, how, the best way to
What
communicate
is
the
best for you
information?
guys? A section, number?
Section will be fine.
If I hope this is correct, 8.7.4.4 under materials in the UDO.
Is this for
Yep.
single family?
This is for like a, either a commercial or business setting. There's a prohibited exterior type building material. And then if you have, if a new facility were to be designed on a property that's already got a prefabricated metal building and the accents match, how would that work? And then if you have one that has like a split block face finish, how would that have to be updated? That facade have to be updated under the new ordinance code?
How it's currently
Yeah,
written,
how it's
right?
currently written, would it, and if so, then what would be the steps? I mean,
Okay.
that's basically that portion of it. And then there was one more, and I'll leave you alone.
That's what we're here for.
That's fine.
Let's see. Like we're on the same,
Yes.
okay.
Yes, and then if you are, if you're multi-purpose, like a school, a church, what parking designation actually do you fall under? I don't know that, when I look at it, it's not clear to me, and I've had other people ask me about that too, so.
I think where these will end up going is with these other very specific questions that then staff should be expected to come back with.
That's
Just an
fine.
answer.
Thank you very
Because I
much.
think they're answerable.
Thank you, Michelle.
Yes, absolutely. James?
I don't know if it would be a specific section, and I'm looking at Carrie and Doug, but particular to the downtown business district. Can you hear me? Particular to the downtown business district, can you hear me now? Is there a particular section where we might clear?
Is that a mic?
Is it on? Okay. Now can you hear me? I don't know that there is a particular section, and I was addressing this more to Carrie and Doug, but for the downtown business district, for redevelopment and infill development, it does not appear to me that there is a survey of all the properties that are in the commercial district, that are also historic properties, or could be designated historic properties. Is there a section already in the UDO? I didn't see anything in particular. We're finally experiencing a problem that is not a problem, that people are interested in buying this wonderful historic commercial building stock downtown, and people are wanting to renovate and change, uses and facades. And I wondered if there was a chance that could be added or perhaps referred to.
I think so.
Carrie, do you
Yeah,
have?
I think I can answer it.
Okay.
And I don't think that would be a UDO thing. It sounds more like what you're asking for is a historic survey, which would be something that we would have to ultimately hire a consultant for, to do basically a national, historic district survey. Just like when the historic district was established, there's a survey, of each property that lists whether it's contributing or not, and then some of those architectural features of the structure. And so there's a portion of the downtown that's listed as the National Register, and it's been surveyed, but there's also a fairly large area of the downtown that doesn't have that survey. But it's not something that's really part of the UDO for development. It would ultimately be a separate architectural survey, of course, and then if it's adopted as a historic district, a local district, then, Section 6 would come into play as far as COAs if it's adopted as a national or a local district.
And my concern would be that not having such protections or studies, that buildings that could be contributing, as you said, it appears to me over 60% of the downtown business district is not surveyed, is not designated historic on any level. So the joy of having people interested is wonderful, but at the same time, I'd love some kind of balance so that there could be some protections, because the UDA currently, you'd be abiding by that if you were redeveloping something in the downtown business district, yes?
If there's two separate things you have, and I hope I'm not yelling at you.
Oh, sorry.
You're fine.
I'm sorry.
There would be two separate things when you have historic districts. You have your development standards, but then you also have the historic district overlay, which, as a historic district resident, it applies to kind of the exterior unless you're locally. So there's two different kind of aspects and two different sort of development requirements if you fall within both of those. But a national, like a survey for historic preservation would be something totally separate. That would be an actual survey. It would have to be adopted as a district to fall in the historic district overlay within the code.
It sounds like that's what you're thinking of, I believe. I think that's what I would put down, is historical survey. We're gonna be able to listen to this and go back and kind of fine tune that, but it sounds like what you're asking for is something like that then would connect back to the UDO
Correct.
and development. Okay.
Just so that you know that something is in this area. A lot of buildings have purchased recently and are being redone, but right now there's no protection.
Right.
Because they're old, but no one acknowledges that they are.
Right, I got it. Who has something that they would like to add or ask a question about? Start going, we'll make sure you have things. So Gary, anything you'd like to see so far? Brad? Julie thinks good stuff, Lance, good. Marion, Richard? Leo? You're good? You got anything to add?
No, ma'am.
Okay.
Looks good.
That. All right. This is gonna be just your chance, right? This is my all. So I'm gonna give you one more chance. I mean, I think you've got some kind of hefty stuff, so what we'll move into then is where the priorities are. As Mark said, if they wanna get on the same page and want you all to know kind of what to expect and what to look for. So, I mentioned a couple that seem to, they just got more mentions, so that seems to mean to me that there are people who have an interest in that. The whole question around by right provisions and things about vested rights seem to be an area that had some people coming together on, as well as the question of density, really. Otherwise, these are all kind of one-offs, so I would suggest those two things might be top of the list, just because they had more folks. But if somebody would like to suggest what you might think is a priority, and then we're going to hopefully get consensus, really, is what I'm looking for. I don't want to have you vote if it's not necessary. If everybody can agree, then staff will go back and start to work on them in that order, and you all can talk about and follow up at the end of this. So anything that's like current for you that you want to see, that you really want staff to start working on immediately.
Well, the thing I was most concerned about was addressed at the last council meeting. That was by right.
Okay?
Can we possibly discuss vested rights since they're already working on it and it's something that we could, they already have in mind what they're going to do, and maybe we can round table what
That looks like
what that looks like, or what maybe the expectations or the additions to that may be.
vested rights, so everybody be good with that being a priority. Anything else that jumps out at you?
The non-performing site plans and rezonings for 2 years plus. I think that's an.
Yeah, and that one looks like it'll probably take a little time and some work on Mr. Long's part, probably to, not tonight, but in the future. And it kind of goes with the vested rights piece.
Yep.
Okay, so that would be priority 2. Anything else? And if there isn't, then I'll have a suggestion for you, but if there are things that you want, I want to hear from you all. Anybody on council that has a burning priority?
I don't know if this is the purview, but I'd like to see more teeth in our code enforcement.
Teeth and code enforcement.
It's a slap on the wrist. I mean, like our tag trees, they can be taken down, not supposed to. All you've got to do is plant another tree and everybody's happy. That's not right. That's not right to do.
Okay, we will add that. What I would suggest to the group, if you're amenable, is after hearing the conversation and kind of getting a couple of big things that I think are priority for folks, is letting your staff go back and kind of put this together, come back to you with a plan that says, these are the priorities you told us, and these are all the other things we've heard, and this is how we're going to bring those back to both groups to understand them. Does that sound workable and appropriate?
And Archie, we're meaning particularly the tree on Houston.
Maybe. Yes, I am.
And I think, and attorneys or staff can correct me, I think there's a $20,000 line item to do another survey to update the tag and tree program. I'm assuming it's still in the budget.
There's just no repercussions for taking one down.
At least that would be part of it, updating what is contributing.
Okay, is everybody agreeable on staff going back, revisiting these things, bringing you something? Is it a time frame that seems reasonable? I can make those up, but you all have to do it, in the next.
What do they think as far as a time frame?
For a plan,
For a plan
to roll these issues back out and get more in depth with them?
Yeah.
Or do you want to review it when Lisa gets back, have a meeting, and then send us some information?
I mean, it's at y'all's pleasure. I mean, you tell us to do it in 4 weeks, we'll have it done in 4 weeks. I mean, as far as, as a plan to go from priority number 1 to last priority, I mean, if you want to have a plan over the next month, we can do that. I mean, obviously, plan is different from a text amendment, but have a plan to how, the order we do it, some ideas, because some of the stuff we already have drafted for the next meeting. So,
And so some of that, and I think, I mean, because I'll be honest, when, in something like the density, I think the density we've already taken care of. I mean,
Well, we did and we didn't. I'm the one that submitted that, and the reason being is when we voted on the density
Michelle.
redefinitions,
Councilman Gordon's having a hard time hearing it all.
There you go.
when we voted to update the density definition, and I'll take this on myself, I wasn't prepared when there was a pushback on the word streams being added in there. So I didn't have a dictionary to look it up or an ability to look it up how state and other statutes handle streams and stream buffers. And then wetlands came up with as a new project that started to be looked at, and we hadn't even addressed that. When we're talking about density and changing the definition from gross acreage to net acreage, part of what was behind the reason to go to net acreage was when you start subtracting buffers, landscape buffers, setbacks, lot sizes, entranceways, you scale a piece of property down significantly. As an example, if you take a 10-acre parcel of land that is going to be developed at medium density, then you got 40 lots. And when you start peeling all the regulatory things away, you can eat up 40, 50, 60% of that 40 acres, but that density number never changed. So what they were doing was coming in and building all the houses tucked in together in that same remaining amount of space. But in order to do that, they wanted permission to ignore lot sizes, frontage, setbacks, and you wound up with just everything being stuck on top of each other. And you had these teeny tiny 1,600 square foot mobile homes without wheels on them.
So how do those things work together is what I think I hear you saying.
Right. So if you can't build on a piece of property and you can't really use it for streets and roadways because it's protected, or it's regulated into buffers to make them individually neighborhoods, we wanted to change the density definition so that the houses built on the remaining land could still comply with the frontage, minimum lot sizes, and setbacks. The reality is they don't. So the developers who are coming in from out of town, they want to walk away with 2 suitcases of money at the end of the day. So they all, previous to this UDO, wanted to go conditional districting. Now they're doing planned urban developments sites so that they can come in and ask for the moon. On top of that, a lot of the property that they want to build on, they're asking for annexation into Monroe. So that involves a lot more city resources to support building developments outside the city limits. So every plan that comes to us isn't totally borne by the developer. It's borne by the city in which it's accepting them on board. So the way we control keeping houses from being one right on top of the other is to control the density and hold the line on lot sizes and frontage. And if you do that in your overall regulations for like the medium density, high density, rural density, hopefully we can get some of these guys will come in here and build nice homes on nice sized lots because the density is holding them there. That's the way they can develop it. A lot of our land is landlocked. We only have so many roads. So they'll go in and they'll buy the 40 acres behind these other houses, and they'll buy one house to give them an entranceway to get back there. And they want to use that unbuildable land for the entryway, which we fixed, to get back to that property. So we're much better off now, but I think we need the definition of a stream is one side to the other, and the definition of a stream buffer is from the stream 30, 35 feet out from that. Technically, when you're doing the math on your density, the way we have it written right now, you can count the mass that stream is taking up, and you can count the mass that the wetland is taking up towards your density, which is just going to mean more houses on less land at the end of the day. And that's what the citizens are upset about, is all these houses packed in when everybody around them is medium density, and we're telling them that this development is medium density, and it's nowhere near medium density in reality. That's what the issue is.
I think what I would say to Mark and staff on those, or I think you should still bring it, what I'm hearing is you still want discussion on these, even if there are things you think have been resolved. I think staff can articulate that as well as give feedback on where maybe it doesn't hit the mark that you thought it was going to hit. So that seems to do a
move to net acreage, did that not satisfy what your concerns were?
When we were in session, I think I'm loud enough. When we were in session, Doug brought up a point, he didn't want to include the word streams in the density definition. And I wasn't prepared for that pushback because everything I had read said streams and stream buffers in everything that I'd read. So I didn't understand why we couldn't put the word stream in there. The board was confused as well. So some of us ran back and started looking up the definitions of streams and stream buffers. I think one of the things Doug had said is that it made it difficult to compute. But frankly, the developers are required to compute that on his survey on the plan when they submit. So that could be, depending on the property, that could be a significant amount of land that can be counted towards density. And then that person's going to want to build to that density if they're building within code. Now, if we set major developments at 50 units that would still go to planning board and council, then that means, okay, I can do 49 units by right and still use that stream and that wetland as part of my density computation and build.
Is there a way to just add stream to the language? That would be the question.
Just to clarify, when you have a stream buffer, the stream is inside the stream buffer.
Negative. It is not. Stream buffer is specifically defined as the area from the natural edge of the stream outward. And the stream itself is bank to bank. That's North Carolina. We'll let the lawyer look it up. You may be applying it that way or considering it that way, but if somebody challenges you, they're going to come back.
It sounds like you need some clarification. I think that's okay.
Yeah, why not make it clear and simple?
It's important that we get a handle on this. We're sitting here as we speak, there's between 7,000 and 8,000 homes that have yet to be built. And people are clamoring now, don't like how it is now. Wait till they get another 8,000 houses. We've got to get a hold of this density thing.
So that's a priority, and we'll get clarification on that. Any other items before I hand this back to Mark?
Well, I had added one on there. I guess I'll go on some more.
Yes.
Uh,
Aaron, but you are allowed. I'm going to let you.
Yeah, thank you. I'm just a big blowhard. Sailors are good at that. Back in August of 2021, when we had the joint meeting before the new UDO was approved, the presentation was very broad-based and went forward to City Council. And City Council tabled it because there was a lot of pushback from people coming into City Council chambers, so they wanted to give it a little more time to work on. But the real issue there is what was presented to the citizens and what actually came up for a final vote went through a lot of backdoor changes. Boards covered in the UDO had their numbers slashed, requirements put in, things like alternate members was stripped out. And at the end of the day, we came down with a number of 7, and all of our boards started falling apart due to term limits. And I know a lot of them have built up since then. Not the Board of Adjustment, it's still struggling with 3 members, one of which was kicked off because he didn't reapply properly, but has been brought back under the article, may continue to serve until successor has been appointed. So I have 1 member that's technically not on a term. But my point is, when it comes to the boards and committees, These are appointed by the mayor, city council. We have people ready to go when we have alternates in the audience, when we lose somebody off the board. We don't have that anymore. So we've had a few short meetings, short member meetings. What I propose is no more partial terms. If you apply for a board, it says in the UDO that I'll just use planning board, that any vacancy in membership shall be filled for the unexpired term. That's after we've already set a term as 4 years. So why are we doing the partial terms? The gentleman to my left here was assigned to a partial term. He did less than a year, and when the numbers were cut down, he was gone. And we needed him. Again, legislatively, if somebody resigns, the governor appoints them to finish the partial term. But on our boards and committees, if we have citizens that want to volunteer to do these things, why can't we, if there's an empty chair, assign them to a 4-year term instead of a partial term? This provides the staggering terms, which is the intent. And we don't put ourselves in a situation where we don't have an alternate to go to like we did in the past to make sure we always had a full board or a quorum. And this is a particular problem with the Board of Adjustment because of the quasi-judicial requirements of how many people you have on the board. So I would like to see us do away with the partial term thing. If I apply to be a member of the planning board, when I'm applying, I'm thinking I'm applying for 4 years. Why should I be assigned a partial term of somebody who stopped showing up or resigned or whatever? Assign me to a 4-year term. You're going to have always have staggered terms that way. But by filling somebody else's terms, again, I'll pick on the gentleman to my left. He is now assigned to another partial term, of which he's going to get less than 2 years on that one. And here's a big question. Politically, if you're assigned to fill somebody else's term, that's not your term. The UDO limits you to 2 terms. Question I have, are those partial terms counted as one, or in his case, 2, since it's happened to him twice now, his 2 terms? So I'd like to clarify that, rewrite this for the boards that's covered under the UDO, to give them Board of Adjustment 3 years, Planning Board 4 years, from the calendar year from which they are appointed. That was what I'd like to be looked into. Another thing with the Planning Board and Board of Adjustment are 7 members, one of which can be a member of the ETJ, extraterritorial jurisdiction. That's fine. As important as the Monroe Planning Board is, which was very effective at 11 members, now cut down to 7, I think you need to consider, and I'm not pushing this one way or another, but I'd like you to consider, we should have 7 Monroe citizens on the planning board and an extraterritorial jurisdiction member appointed by Union County as an additional member, voting member, who is technically voting in the interest of Union County. Now, yeah, that would set you up for 8 members instead of 7. But we would have 7 citizens of Monroe fighting for the citizens of Monroe on the planning board. And if you want an uneven number, fine, make it 9. But this is an important board that can do a lot of work. And the UDO says that we're supposed to look everything administrative and beyond, which includes all the permitting stuff that somebody put on there. So something to consider and something that we should work on. I've already provided that to planning board a couple of months ago, so I haven't heard anything back on it yet. Thank you.
Thank you. Got it on the list now. All right, one last chance.
I got a big mouth. Everybody can hear me. And Archie just reminded me of it. I'd like, and staff may have already started this. We had a tree board at one time. All of our historic trees were tagged, couldn't cut them. And most tree services knew this. Well, we've had a rash of people cutting historic trees in the city. I've always been looking for a niche for Monroe. You know, for Waxhaw was the town that you did antique shopping, and you know, I've always sort of thought we need our niche. And I think if we can build up, we have a beautiful historic area. If we can build up that, sort of to put ourselves out as a historic town. But we need to protect the trees because they're beautiful. So they need to be tagged, and we need to enforce that.
I'll add to that, the city of Monroe has lost its designation of tree city. I don't know how we lost it. Carrie or Doug may be able to speak on that, but that was brought up to us in a meeting that we lost that distinction.
Get that added also. Okay. Candidates tomorrow. Thank you. You are all very good feedback. Lots of good discussion. Thank you.
I'd like to echo that. You know, these are some of these topics are very weighty topics. They have impact both now and into the future. And I applaud y'all for really engaging and really wanting to dig into this, tackle it, and make it right now so that the future issues don't have to be ironed out one at a time, and that things can be more consistent going forward. Doug and Carrie, y'all think y'all have everything you need to take back and discuss with Lisa in terms of list of topics that the planning board and the city council are interested in seeing and having you look at and moving forward with?
We do.
Okay, all right, very good. So on, you know, as, I just want to comment on the stream buffer piece. It's one thing that I'm familiar with. Yes, I know that there are very specific definitions for streams. You know, what makes up the stream, the width of the stream from bank to bank, and where that center line of that stream is becomes very important, especially to a lot of property lines. And then you have these setbacks for a number of different reasons. You know, there are floodplains. You know, that's one setback. There are other setbacks that Department of Natural Resources out of Raleigh, you know, determine what the setback on streams should be for vegetation, you know, not being cleared because of the sediment and the erosion control factors, protecting the streams and keeping the water quality where it needs to be and protecting the aquatic life that's in those streams. So there's a number of different factors there. It's making sure that we have it defined the way that our staff understands, our planning board wants, and our city council approves. That's what we're after, right? Yep, yep. And a number of communities do it that way. Just to reference, a number of years ago, the county had to enact some pretty stringent setbacks on their stream buffers because of erosion control measures and the flooding that was taking place. And, you know, that was the residual impact of development that would, you know, when you have impervious surfaces and you have more runoff and things like that. And so those things had to be addressed at that time, and because of the severity of those, the state came in and mandated some very wide buffers, vegetation buffers. And, you know, it's very clear that you cannot infringe upon those buffers in any way, shape, or form. Some of our other municipalities have, I know, adopted those stream buffers into their calculation for the net acreage that can be used in the calculation for density. So it has been done in other areas. I will tell you, every municipality within Union County has its own distinct culture, and they have to do what's right for them. Monroe has to think about what's right for Monroe, and as an appointed board, as advisors to city council, to this elected board, this group of people has to decide what's right for the city of Monroe. That's the way I see it. That's the way I see it. So, Mr. Chairman and Mr. Mayor, we are to the point of some just closing comments, and wanted to get, if members around the table have any closing comments they would like to make, I think that would be beneficial for everyone to hear. And since Councilman Carr is sitting right here next to me, I'm going to just hand the mic to him, and he can pass it, and we'll just pass the mic around. And when those comments are finished, then I'll turn the meeting back over to the chair and the mayor. Guys, I believe you had some things you wanted to talk about. You can do that when you come around to your turn. Sure.
I want to thank everybody for coming. I especially want to reiterate the thanks to Pete and Bradley and everyone in planning. This setup and getting this together didn't just happen in 5 minutes. We appreciate that. Would it be the consensus of the group to come back in this kind of setup? And you said you can do it in 30 days. Is that?
We can get a game plan to get back from the planning board. We can get a game plan how we can do this in the next 30 days.
And then reconvene in this manner? Not in 30 days, and how many days?
3 months, 90 days.
60 days?
Yeah.
41 days? Okay.
I think.
Whatever y'all tell us to do, we'll do. If you want to do it in 3 months, that's fine. I mean, and because some of this stuff, we're going to go ahead and, I guess, is staff okay to go ahead and proceed with some of the text amendments anyway that we're proposing now?
Absolutely.
Okay.
I mean, you've been working with the planning board. I think that you continue that work with the planning board. Y'all had discussions, and you have items that you need to bring to them already. Absolutely. Let's not stop progress here. Let's move forward.
How about the end of July? Show of hands. Reconvene like this. End of July.
Yeah.
And then I also want to thank Michelle for a masterful job of mediating. Thank Mark for putting all this together. And just appreciate all y'all being here.
All right, well, again, thank you for everybody that's come out tonight, for our guests that have come out as well. And I do want to just take this time to publicly thank our planning board and to thank Richard as our chair. I think that Richard does a great job. I think that each and every one of you do a great job. There's no doubt that you care about the city, that you want to have a great city. And I think from what I've seen, just say in the last 6 months. The planning board is taking projects that initially start off, let's just say they start off in the fair range. You all talk to the developers, tell the developers what's expected, and get it to the good range. Then you talk to the developers some more, tell them what's expected, get it to the great stage. And I think a lot of the projects that have come to us recently, you can truly tell that you all have vetted that process, that you all have taken every measure possible to try to make that developer produce the very best project for the city of Monroe. And there's no doubt that you are a very dedicated and caring board. We appreciate you very much, and thank you to everybody for their role tonight, because to me this has been a very professional setup, and it's been professional from the start, and it's going to have a professional finish, and I appreciate that.
Without being repetitive, I think these gentlemen have pretty well explained it. We thank you for your coming. We thank you for your commitment to our city. It's a pleasure being here with you.
I won't repeat either. I'll just say thank you to everyone here, from the officers in the back to Bradley behind the screen, everyone here. Michelle, thank you for helping us out. We appreciate it. I just want to add one more thing on a personal note. It's very encouraging to sit down in this setting and be able to discuss issues, concerns, things that need attention in Monroe, and do it in a professional way, and come away with solutions, suggestions. Perhaps we don't always agree on everything, but we are able to sit down and really talk about it because we care. We're here to serve. So thank you to our city staff, as well as our management staff and our attorney and my colleagues. It's a pleasure to be here and a pleasure to be with you all.
It's an honor for me also to be with everybody. The planning board, in my opinion, you guys do a phenomenal job. Staff does a great job. I think working together as we are, we will get to where we want to get to, and it's good to see everybody again.
It's like Freddie said, it's hard to add any more than what's been said, but I would like to thank staff. Michelle, thank you for a wonderful job of being facilitator. And to each member on our planning board, you've heard me say this before, you guys do the heavy lifting, and your advice is certainly always welcome. It's always well thought out, and we appreciate the dedication and time, the sacrifices y'all make to make great decisions for our city. So I want to thank you for that. I just had a comment. I think, James, you mentioned about meeting here. With this number, why can we not meet in our conference room? That way we won't have to be setting up all this and taking this time. If people don't have a problem with it, staff's right there at City Hall. So maybe there's something to think about, I think.
So I'm going to continue to thank you. Nobody's thanked Pete yet, but I'm going to thank Pete. I want to thank the planning board. We've got a couple of folks that aren't here, but your dedication and your diligence. I know that we don't always see eye to eye on everything. Sometimes there's a little friction, but the fiduciary responsibility that every member of this board has accepted and exhibits is phenomenal. I've sat on a lot of boards like this, and not everybody brings that diligence to it. So I do want to thank each and every one of you. I'm happy David's back, so that'll add to the love in my life as David and I have good discussions. Sometimes fun, sometimes a little friction, but that's okay. That's what we need. Because if we agreed on everything all the time, then we wouldn't be doing the right thing for the people we serve. So, staff, thank you very much. I appreciate everything that you do.
Well, I just want to say that I enjoy working on planning board. We have a good board now. We have lots of different views, but that's where you learn from somebody that's got a different view. It might change your mind. So I really enjoy it. I want to thank all the people that we do work with here. I want to thank staff. They do a tremendous job, a lot of hard work. So anyway, I think meetings like this are great, and hope to do it again soon.
Well, I'm enjoying my time on the planning board and also the historic district commission. And just like planning board and historic district, we're trying to bring better and better projects. It has come a long way since my short tenure on the planning board. Some of the stuff that has been approved would never fly by this board again. And like has been said, we don't always get along with everything, but we all have the same vision. And I think it's the vision that the city council also has. You know, we're all in this together. We all want good developments for the city of Monroe. And sometimes we may disagree on a few fine points, but you know, our direction is the same. And it's great to have a city council, you know, that will listen to us and maybe not implement everything that we want to do, but they'll at least listen to us, and that's saying something too.
Well, I'd just like to say that it's a privilege to be on this board. It's a privilege to be a citizen servant, be able to do something for your community, and I appreciate the confidence that you have put into me to put me back on this board. I would like to say this. Monroe is a wonderful place to live. My family lives here in Monroe, and this, you know, I don't know if the developers would like this, but we need to be stingy with Monroe. What you want to build here should be something of quality, and it should be something that's going to last, and it's going to promote families and long-term citizenship here. And so that's what I think this board is trying to do at this point. I think each one of us has the elevations. I think we have the technicality of it all, and you know, then you have myself and Mr. Deal who just tear it apart and try to look at it piece by piece. So everybody has a role to play. So I appreciate your confidence, and I enjoy my second term on the planning board.
Your second time.
My second
We
term.
haven't determined if it's a second term yet.
Okay, okay, there you go.
You haven't served the term yet.
This is true.
Mr. Mayor, City Council, I'd like to thank you for giving us the opportunity for the venue to bring some of the things that we had concerns about directly to your attention. There are items on the list that was placed up there that still need worked on. You still have areas in the UDO that allows a developer to ask for undefinable 6-month extensions on projects that hold the city up indefinitely that we need to get under control. We have added a permanent item to our agenda, UDO discussions, so as a board, we'll talk about the other things on the list as well as the priorities, and continue in our responsibility as defined by the UDO to send matters forward to you that we think need your attention. And at the end of the day, one of the things that we've done over the last 6 months has put the responsibility of the decisions back in your chair for all these developments going in Monroe, which is what I as a citizen expect, and as a board member and chairman of the Board of Adjustment, appreciate the opportunity to contribute to. Thank you. Carrie? You don't have any. You're important, Carrie.
Okay, before I give it back to the mayor and the chairman, there's two things that I would like to note. One, the urban forester has been mentioned a couple of times in the meeting tonight, and some of you may be familiar with that position and that program, and some of you may not. So I thought this would be a really good time to make you aware. But Union County, through its Cooperative Extension Department and Ag Department, has an urban forester. This gentleman is phenomenal. His salary comes from a number of different places. The county pays part of his salary. The city of Monroe pays part of his salary. and the other municipalities chip in and pay the rest of his salary. He doesn't divvy out his time based on the percent that we pay for his salary. And so he has hours to devote to the city of Monroe, and I would encourage both staff and the boards to call upon his expertise. He's available to come and talk to the planning board if need be, or talk to the historical district commission, you know, as need be. Use him as a resource. It's valuable. And most recently, we used him out at the airport in assessing the health of a number of trees out there, and they turned out to be too diseased to be able to be saved, and that helped us make some decisions. But it also helped us get a plan for how to replant in the fall and what types of trees and species needed to go back in the place of the diseased trees, so we wouldn't have to repeat that mistake that was made in past years. The last thing I would like to note is that at the County Council meeting this week, County Council passed a code of ethics for all of its boards, a resolution for a code of ethics for all of its boards, commissions, etc., that it appoints that provide advice to City Council. City Council already takes or has a code of ethics, and as well as our Youth Council has a code of ethics that applies to it. Our city attorney, in doing some work that he was challenged with by the council to look at all of the systems and processes that the city uses in administration of its work, made the recommendation that, or made the note that there was lacking a code of ethics for all of the appointed boards. So the council has adopted that code of ethics, and staff will be working with the planning board and all of the other boards to present that to you at your next regularly scheduled meeting. And those, and whether at the presentation, if you want to take the time to read through that and then sign off on those at the next meeting after that, that's fine. If members feel like you're comfortable with signing off on it at the meeting in which it's presented, that's fine too. But ultimately, we'll need a signed acknowledgement form from each member from each board. Okay? So with that, I'll turn it back over to Mayor Moore.
Thanks, everyone, once again for being here. I'll entertain a motion to adjourn our council.
So moved.
A second.
I have a motion and a second. In favor, raise your hand, please. All right, the city council is adjourned.
Motion to adjourn. I'll entertain a motion to adjourn. Mr. Dodson made that motion.
Second.
Got a second? All in favor, say aye. Aye. Anybody that wants to stay? Thank you all.
Anytime. You too.